All right. Back to Mercy Watson Fights Crime by Kate DiCamillo. We are to chapter 11. So find chapter 11. It's on page 40. Okay. And so far, we have met Leroy Ninker, who is a cowboy thief, right? He was stealing the toaster and other kitchen appliances from the Watson household. Mercy woke up and thought somebody was making toast and she was hungry, so she went down and caught Leroy stealing. But she was so sleepy, she just went back to sleep, didn't she? And then he tried to leave so he wouldn't get caught, but unfortunately she woke up when he was straddling her. And then she thought she smelled butter, so she took off. Right? And he, being a not very smart thief, is yelling yippee-yi-oh the whole time they're running through the neighborhood. And then we had the old grouches, Eugenia and a sister baby, who woke up and decided they needed to call the police because they were just this pig and cowboy was disturbing everyone. Okay, and so now that's where we left off. So chapter 11. You ready? Get your finger ready. Let's follow along. Next door, Mrs. Watson discovered that Mercy was not in her bed. "Mr. Watson!" she shouted. "Come at once!" Mr. Watson came at once. "Mercy is not here," said Mrs. Watson. "Are you certain?" asked Mr. Watson. "Have you looked under the bed?" Mrs. Watson bent over. She looked under the bed. "She's not there," said Mrs. Watson. Mr. and Mrs. Watson stood together in Mercy's room. "What should we do?" asked Mrs. Watson. "Yippee-yi-oh!" "Oh, it's that noise again," said Mrs. Watson. Mr. Watson went to the window. No pictures. Oh. He opened the curtain. He looked outside. "Mrs. Watson," said Mr. Watson, "we must call the fire department immediately. It's an emergency." So they're calling the fire department. And the sisters next door are calling the police. Chapter 12. In reality, Leroy Ninker was a small thief on the back of a big pig. But in Leroy's mind, he was a cowboy, riding a bucking bronco in the Wild West. "Being a cowboy is hard work," said Leroy Ninker. "I need some refreshment." Leroy reached into his shirt pocket. He grabbed hold of a butter barrel candy. He unwrapped it with one hand and he put it in his mouth. Oh, I bet that's the butter that Mercy smelled, right? That's what Mercy smelled, was the butter barrel candy, not real butter. And now he's gone and put another piece in his mouth. "Ah," said Leroy Ninker, "this is a life." But just then the pig kicked up her heels, the pig bucked, the pig reared. Leroy Ninker lost his grip. "Yippee!" said Leroy. He flew through the air. "I," said Leroy. He landed on his back. "Oh," said Leroy Ninker. So he was saying yippee-yi-oh as he fell, right? Good job, Mercy. Get him off your back. Chapter 13. Mercy sniffed. There was the delightful smell again. Butter. See, I was right. Anybody else think that too, though? Did you think of it before me? Oh, I bet you did. You probably figured it out way back whenever you very first ate it. She looked around. She saw the little man lying on the ground, and she sniffed his face. "Hee," the little man said. "That tickles." Mercy snuffled the man's shirt. "Hee," he said again. In order to snuffle the man better, Mercy sat on top of him. "Oh, get off of me," said the man. Mercy put her snout in the man's shirt pocket. She snuffled some more. "Oh, said the man. "Help!" So he's laughing because it tickles, but he knows he's in trouble and he needs this big old pig off of him, right? Can you imagine Mercy sitting on top of you? Woo! Mercy found a piece of candy. She bit into it. It was sweet. It was lovely. It was very, very buttery. Mercy sat on top of the little man and chewed. A siren wailed. "Aw, shucks," said the man. Chapter 14. The fire department arrived first. "We have to find this house before," said the fireman. Oh, wait, I need to reread that, don't I? "We have been to this house before," said the fireman named Ned. "You're right," said the fireman named Lorenzo. "This is the house with the pig." "And the toast," said Ned. "We ate toast at this house." Must be in one of the other Mercy Watson books, right? I think it was the first one, but I might be wrong. "I see the pig," said Lorenzo. He pointed at Mercy. "The pig is sitting on somebody." "Good grief," said Ned. Ned and Lorenzo got out of the fire truck. They saw Mr. and Mrs. Watson running out the front door of their house. They saw Eugenia Lincoln and baby Lincoln running out of the front door of their house. "This is an interesting job, isn't it?" said Ned. "Very interesting," said Lorenzo. "So the sisters do not look happy. They just need to chill, right? But Mercy has saved the day, and Mr. and Mrs. Watson look like what is going on?" And Mercy looks happy because look at his face, or her face. That butter candy, it's good. All right. Chapter 15. Officer Tomalello pulled into the driveway of 54 Decawoo Drive. In the yard, he saw 2 firemen, 3 women in nightgowns, and 1 man in pajamas. They were all gathered around a pig. "Is that the same pig I caught driving a convertible?" he asked himself. "Oh, that must be another book. We need to go get the book about Mercy driving the convertible, right?" "It is," he answered himself. "It is exactly the same pig." Officer See? Now everybody can say it. Tomalello, there we go, squinted. "Is that pig sitting on top of somebody?" Officer Tomalello asked himself. "That certainly looks to be the case," he answered himself. "Officer! Officer!" shouted baby. "Come quickly, Mercy has caught a thief." Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson and Eugenia Lincoln and baby Lincoln and Ned and Lorenzo and Officer Tomalello all looked down at Mercy. "Are you a thief?" Officer Tomalello asked the man underneath the pig. "I am," said Leroy Ninker. "I am a thief." "Were you robbing these people?" Officer Tomalello asked. "I was," said Leroy Ninker, "until the pig got involved." "Gentlemen," said Officer, you want to know what I do when there's a name and I don't like pronouncing it, my mouth doesn't like pronouncing it? I shorten it. So I'm going to call him Officer Tommy. And you can do that too when you're reading in your head. You just have to remember that if you're answering questions or telling someone about the story, that the name is actually longer. But I do that all the time. If I don't like a name, because it's only you in your mind reading it. It doesn't matter how you pronounce it, right? So this is Officer Tommy. Tomalello is a mouthful. All right, let me try again. Ready? "Gentlemen," said Officer Tommy, "will you assist me in removing the pig?" On the count of 3, Ned and Lorenzo and Officer Tommy lifted Mercy off of Leroy Ninker. "You are under arrest," said Officer Tommy. "It's that pig you should be arresting," said Eugene. Oh, she is not nice, is she? And I didn't say it with my southern accent, so let's do it again. "It's that pig you should be arresting," said Eugenia Lincoln. Why would she be arresting the pig? Crabby people. I don't like crabby people. Leroy Ninker stood with his cowboy hat in his hand. He looked down at his feet. "Oh, officer," said Mrs. Watson, "the thief is so tiny. Shouldn't he have something to eat before you arrest him?" Oh, maybe he needs some toast, said Ned. With a great deal of butter on it, added Lorenzo. Ooh, toast? Asked Officer Tommy. Who needs toast? Why, everyone needs toast, said Mrs. Watson. Even cowboys? Said Leroy Ninker. Mercy pricked up her ears. Oh, toast, butter, at last! She headed for the Watsons' kitchen, and everyone followed her. The next morning, the front page of the newspaper read, Pet pig captures thief, sits on him until help arrives. She's a porcine wonder, said the pig's owner, Mrs. Watson. She is a very, very brave dear, said Mr. Watson, husband of Mrs. Watson and proud co-owner of the pig. She's a sly pig, said the Watsons' neighbor, Eugenia Lincoln, and things with her are never as they seem. She's grumpy. Why do people be grumpy? No reason to be grumpy. Baby Lincoln, sister to Eugenia Lincoln, remarked that the most interesting things seem to happen when one has pie right before bed. The pig did capture the thief, said Police Officer Bert Tomalello. How it happened, I'm not quite certain, but did it happen? It did. Fireman Ned Fortune and Lorenzo Wiz were also at the scene. They both agreed that the pig had some amazing abilities. They also pointed out that Mrs. Watson made excellent toast. The thief, Leroy Ninker, is interested in reforming himself. He would like to become a cowboy. The pig had nothing to say, but she seemed very pleased with herself. Yes, Mercy does, doesn't she? The end. I love these books. Aren't they the best? And there are some great ones. The convertible one, the toast one, the first toast one. So you guys be sure and check those out. All right. See you later.